The camera pans across the glowing CNN debate stage. Under the harsh studio lights, two women face each other like warriors before battle. A red, white, and blue banner flutters behind them, but the air is thick with something far heavier than patriotism. It's tension, it's anticipation, and it's being watched by 42 million people. Yes, 42 million. The entire country is holding its breath. In the center, Anderson Cooper stands still, his face calm, but his eyes sharp. He knows what's coming. We all do. On one side sits Jasmine Crockett, elegant, composed, but fierce beneath the surface. A woman shaped by resistance, not privilege. Her eyes never blink, never drift. They're locked on one target, the woman across from her. That woman, Karoline Leavitt, sits like she owns the room. Chin high, smile tight, confidence sharpened like a blade. She isn't nervous, she's ready to strike. Because tonight, this isn't just a debate. It's war over truth, identity, and who really belongs in America. And in seconds, that war will begin. And then it happens. Karoline Leavitt leans into the microphone, her voice like ice wrapped in velvet. She smiles, but it's not kindness, it's calculation. The entire studio goes silent, sensing something dangerous is coming. Then she says it, slow, sharp, deliberate. You don't deserve to stand on American soil. For a second, the air vanishes from the room. Not a whisper, not a gasp. Even the cameras seem to pause. It's the kind of sentence that doesn't just offend, it erases. A sentence meant to cut deeper than policy. This is personal. This is targeted. Jasmine Crockett doesn't move, but her jaw tightens. Her silence is not weakness, it's control. She's heard these words before, but never this public, never this bold. Millions of viewers sit frozen at home staring. What just happened? Did she really say that? And what comes next will change everything. The words hang in the air like smoke from a just-fired gun. No applause, no rebuttal, no cough, just silence. The kind of silence that doesn't soothe, but slices. Like a knife pressed against dignity. Like a verdict delivered without a trial. Anderson Cooper shifts slightly, barely noticeable, but enough to know even he felt it. The producers in the control room freeze. One camera zooms in instinctively on Jasmine's face. She's still not moving. Her lips don't tremble, her eyes don't blink. But the tension around her mouth says everything. That wasn't just a political jab. That was a sentence designed to bury, to unmake someone, to tell millions watching she does not belong. And for a moment, the country watches not just to see what Jasmine will say, but to see if she can even breathe in a space that just tried to erase her. Jasmine doesn't blink. She doesn't fidget. She doesn't glance down. She doesn't need to. Her stillness is louder than any scream. Because Jasmine Crockett has been here before. Not in front of 42 million viewers, but in courtrooms, on protest lines, at town halls, where her worth was constantly questioned, where her voice was always a little too loud, a little too black, a little too uninvited. So now she breathes, just once, in, out. The insult still echoes, but Jasmine doesn't wear it. She lets it float untouched like a lie that never landed. Her silence is strategy. Her stillness is armor. She's not frozen, she's focused. Because while Karoline believes she's just silenced her opponent, what she's really done is light a fuse. Millions are watching, but no one's breathing. Karoline has just said the unspeakable. And Jasmine, she hasn't said a word, not yet. But her silence is not surrender. It's the quiet before the quake. Because everyone in that room, and everyone watching at home, knows what's coming. Jasmine is about to speak. And when she does, it won't be a response. It won't be a rebuttal. It will be a reckoning. The question is no longer political. It's personal. It's ancestral. It's moral. What truth could dismantle 100 years of inherited privilege in just 1 minute? Stay right where you are, because what's coming will change everything. Karoline leans forward. Her voice is calm. Her tone is smooth. But her words are poison wrapped in patriotism. America, she begins, isn't just a country, it's a legacy. One that belongs to those who carry the right blood, those who were born understanding its soul. The words sound polished, but listen closer. They're not about love for country, they're about control. They're about exclusion. She doesn't say Jasmine's name, she doesn't have to. Every syllable drips with the message, "You are not one of us." Karoline continues, voice unwavering, smile still fixed. Loyalty isn't something you earn by protesting in the streets or giving speeches in Congress. It's something passed down, something you're born into, like a birthright. The room tightens. So do the fists of millions watching. Because now it's clear Karoline isn't defending America. She's defining it to exclude people like Jasmine and millions like her. Karoline's words don't shout. They don't insult in the way most expect. There's no slur, no raised voice, no overt attack. But that's what makes them so dangerous. Because her weapon isn't rage, it's refinement. It's the illusion of civility wrapped around a knife. She says legacy. She says loyalty. She says understanding the soul of the nation. But what she means is, you're not like us. You'll never be enough. Your service doesn't count because your blood doesn't match. To the untrained ear, it sounds poetic. To those who've lived it, it sounds like every door that's ever been closed. Every boardroom that went silent when you walked in. Every "you speak so well" that actually meant you don't belong. Jasmine knows this language. She's heard it her entire life. It's the language of polite rejection, of exclusion in a velvet box. And Karoline knows exactly what she's doing. Jasmine stays silent. But this isn't the silence of someone stunned. It's not the silence of defeat. It's the silence of calculation. Behind that still expression, she's flipping through memories, through case files, through headlines, through history. She's not searching for what to say, she already knows. She's choosing how to say it, so that when she speaks, the words land like bricks. Karoline has used words like a curtain to veil her attack in civility. But Jasmine, she's holding a mirror. And soon she's going to lift it. The truth is her weapon, not emotion, not volume, not applause. And when she does speak, she won't be defending herself. She'll be redefining the room. Let's pause, not because the moment is over, but because we need to see what just happened for what it truly is. Karoline didn't just question Jasmine's loyalty, she tried to privatize patriotism. To declare it a family heirloom, something passed down through veins, not earned through service. This is the most dangerous kind of prejudice, not the kind that shouts from the streets, but the kind that sits in a suit, smiling, saying, "It's not personal, it's just how America works." But it isn't how America works. It's how power protects itself. When you say only true-born Americans understand loyalty, you're not defining love for country, you're drawing a fence. You're saying, if you don't share my roots, you can't share my rights. It sounds polite, it sounds reasonable, but it's exclusion legalized. It's bigotry in a business suit. And Jasmine, she's not just fighting back with facts, she's fighting a myth disguised as tradition. Finally, Jasmine moves. Just a breath, just a shift in her shoulders, but the weight in the room changes instantly. Her voice doesn't rise, it drops, low, clear, steady. Loyalty to this country, she says, isn't something handed down in a family tree. It's something built, something earned by what you give, what you sacrifice, and who you fight for. The silence breaks, not with sound, but with realization. She doesn't flinch. She doesn't beg. She declares. Her words slice through Karoline's polished facade like sunlight through fog. This isn't defense, it's doctrine. And suddenly, the narrative isn't Karoline's anymore. Jasmine has taken the floor, not with volume, but with truth that cannot be inherited. She didn't yell, she didn't pound the podium, but Jasmine Crockett did something far more dangerous. She chose her words like scalpels. Every syllable, deliberate, surgical, exact. I didn't come here with a legacy, she said. I built mine. I've fought for this country, and my loyalty is earned. These weren't sound bites. They were truths hammered into shape by a life lived under scrutiny, by a woman who's had to prove herself twice as hard for half the credit. Each phrase cut through decades of lies. Each pause hit harder than a raised voice. Because Jasmine wasn't arguing, she was correcting history. This wasn't just a response to Karoline, it was a reclaiming of the national microphone. In that moment, Jasmine wasn't just a congresswoman. She was a scalpel slicing through the infection of inherited superiority. And every word she spoke bled truth. It wasn't a roar, it wasn't a speech, it was a look. A single unwavering gaze from Jasmine Crockett straight across the stage, steel to skin. Calm, but cutting. And for the first time that night, Karoline Leavitt blinked. Just once, but once was enough. Because power, real power, doesn't always enter with noise. Sometimes it arrives in the form of unshaken stillness. Karoline shifted in her seat. Subtle, but not unnoticeable. She tilted her head, maybe out of discomfort, maybe to reorient herself. Because something had cracked. Not in the debate, not in the arguments, in her. For the first time, Karoline saw that Jasmine wasn't just resisting, she was reversing the lens. Karoline was no longer the interrogator. She was the one being examined, measured, exposed. And Jasmine never looked away. The audience doesn't erupt. They don't cheer. They don't gasp. Instead, they feel it. That strange electric silence when something undeniable just happened. The kind of silence where you know you're no longer watching a debate. You're watching a shift, a transfer of authority, of moral gravity. For the first time that night, the weight in the room isn't leaning toward Karoline's podium. It's gravitating toward Jasmine. Not because she raised her voice, but because she didn't have to. People start leaning forward even at home. Brows furrow, breath held, not out of shock, but out of recalibration. They're no longer wondering what Jasmine will say next. They're realizing something deeper. She's not asking for space. She's already claimed it. And somehow, without fanfare, without fury, the power has shifted. The silence is broken, but not by applause, not by support, by something else entirely. Paper. Karoline reaches beneath her podium. Her hand reemerges gripping a thick folder, bright red, stamped with CNN's watermark. Theatrical, calculated. She holds it high, not to read it, to show it, to weaponize it. Since we're talking about loyalty, she begins, I brought receipts. She flips the folder open, fingers landing on a pre-marked page. June 4, 2020, Jasmine Crockett speaks at an event co-sponsored by a group calling to defund the police. August 19, 2021, she signs a solidarity letter backing a group that refers to the U.S. military as a tool of oppression. October 3, 2022, she endorses a civil action group linked to violent clashes in multiple cities. Karoline doesn't raise her voice. She doesn't need to. She lets the folder do the damage. She waves a page with bolded text, just long enough for the cameras to catch it, but not long enough to verify it. The message is clear. She says she loves this country, but look who she supports. Gasps ripple. Murmurs rise. Even Anderson Cooper looks up. The silence that once belonged to Jasmine has been hijacked. For now. Karoline doesn't just stop at dates and headlines. She leans in, voice smooth but sharp like a scalpel. Ladies and gentlemen, this isn't about debate anymore. This is about the safety of our nation. She turns eyes locking on Jasmine. When someone signs a letter that supports defunding the police, when they speak at events with groups that denounce our military as oppressive, can we really call that loyalty? The words are dressed in patriotism, but laced with poison. Karoline begins pacing, a performance within a performance. It's not just about policy, it's about values. You either stand with those who protect this country or you stand with those who burn its flag. She holds the room hostage with the most dangerous kind of narrative, the false binary. One that leaves Jasmine with two impossible choices: defend herself and be seen as unpatriotic, or stay silent and let the lie grow. And Karoline knows it. She seals the moment with a smile that isn't friendly, it's victorious. The room is tense. The crowd murmurs again. Some shake their heads. Some nod slowly. A seed has been planted, and Karoline's betting the world will water it. This wasn't just a debate anymore. It was a setup, not to win an argument, but to frame Jasmine as the villain. Karoline hadn't just listed facts. She'd built a narrative maze, one designed to manipulate emotion, distract from context, and divide the room. She supported defunding the police. She stood with groups that questioned the military. Each line was true, but none told the whole truth. That's the trap. It's how public figures get turned into threats, how advocates become enemies, how patriotism is turned into a purity test. And Karoline played the role perfectly. Cool voice, composed face, like the hero of a staged script. But Jasmine didn't take the bait. She didn't flinch, didn't interrupt, didn't plead. She let the audience marinate in discomfort. Because Jasmine knew, if a lie is dressed in calm logic, only a deeper truth can rip off its mask. And that's what she was about to deliver. The lights still burned hot. The crowd still sat frozen. Karoline thought she'd won the room. But Jasmine leaned forward, slow, steady. Her eyes never left Karoline's. Her voice controlled, razor sharp. "This is how it works," Jasmine began. "Smear, distract, distort. That's the whole playbook. No shouting, no outrage, just exposure. You don't have to tell a full lie to deceive people. You just have to break the truth into pieces, hand-pick the fragments, and paint the picture you want them to believe." A flicker moved through the crowd. Jasmine stood up. She didn't raise her tone, she raised the stakes. "You want to talk about my record? Let's talk about the speeches you didn't mention, the legislation I fought for, the people I protected, the communities I stood beside when no one else showed up." The studio no longer belonged to Karoline. It belonged to the woman who refused to kneel. Jasmine wasn't defending herself. She was indicting the strategy, the pattern, the centuries-old method of silencing voices that rise. "They don't have to jail us anymore," she said. "They just have to question our loyalty loud enough." That's when the room changed. Not visually, but emotionally. Something cracked. The illusion that Karoline held power shattered, not because Jasmine yelled, but because she told the truth with such precision the lie couldn't breathe anymore. Jasmine didn't yell. She didn't pound the podium. She simply reached down and pulled out a red folder. It wasn't flashy, it wasn't thick, but every page inside it had the weight of a wrecking ball. "Since we're opening files," Jasmine said, "let me share one of my own." Karoline blinked. For the first time, uncertainty crossed her face. Jasmine held the folder with both hands, not as a prop, but as a reckoning. "This," she continued, "is a summary of verified contributions from political action committees tied to private prisons funneled into campaigns that happen to benefit you directly." The screen behind her lit up. Receipts, names, dates, numbers no one could deny. And here she flipped a page. "We have land records, 1912. Karoline's family didn't just immigrate. They bought land seized during forced removals of black sharecroppers in Louisiana. Gasps. From the audience, from journalists, even from the tech crew in the back. Jasmine's voice still calm. "So when you talk about real Americans, maybe you should tell the full story of where your legacy was built. Not just who built it, but who was broken for it." Karoline didn't speak. The room wasn't just stunned, it was holding its breath. Because this wasn't mudslinging, this was a mirror, and Jasmine had just turned it around. Jasmine paused for only a beat, then slowly turned the page. And then she said, "There's this." She held up a scanned document. The audience leaned forward. The screen behind her showed an immigration manifest from 1903. A name scratched out. A new name written in shaky English handwriting. "This is from Ellis Island, your great-grandfather's arrival." Karoline's eyes widened barely, but enough. Jasmine's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. "He arrived from Hungary, no papers, no sponsors. Claimed to be German to avoid suspicion. Changed his last name from Levitsky to Leavitt." Gasps again, more intense this time. "He wasn't a true-born American. He was undocumented. And he lied because the system was designed to punish who he truly was." She let that hang. "So Karoline, if loyalty lives in the blood, what does that say about the name you carry?" Karoline didn't answer. She couldn't. The irony was blistering. The audience could feel it. The woman who built her persona on purity was descended from a man who hid to survive, a man who lied to belong. And suddenly everything she'd said before about bloodlines and real Americans collapsed under the weight of that truth. Jasmine stood still, not towering, not loud, but unshakable. The studio was silent again, but not like before. This time it was the silence of realization. Jasmine looked directly at Karoline, and the words she spoke weren't just a response. They were a verdict. Your family sought refuge. Mine fought to stay. No rage, no sarcasm, just a truth so pure it left no room for debate. While your great-grandfather changed his name to escape discrimination, my ancestors had no such luxury. They were branded, chained, and told they didn't belong on land they built. She paused. Let the weight of history settle in the room. You talk about legacy like it's something inherited, but I live it. I carry it. I fight for it, not because it was passed down, but because it was almost erased. Her voice was still calm, but every syllable struck like a gavel. And when she finished, the room didn't just gasp, it rose. Not physically, not yet, but something had shifted. Something undeniable. Karoline had delivered a script. Jasmine had delivered a reckoning. You could hear the studio lights hum. That's how quiet it was. No applause, no gasps, just a sacred, wordless pause. As if everyone had inhaled, but no one dared to exhale. Jasmine had said her piece. She didn't look smug. She didn't look victorious. She looked complete. Karoline was silent, not because she didn't have words, but because no words would work anymore. Everything that needed to be said had already been carved into the room. Loyalty, legacy, belonging. The audience didn't cheer, they absorbed. What Jasmine had delivered wasn't entertainment, it was a reckoning, centuries in the making. And she'd done it without screaming, without rage. No fist was raised, no voice was cracked. But somehow, the ground had shifted. A single tear ran down one viewer's cheek in the front row. He didn't wipe it. Because for the first time, someone had spoken for those who were always told to be silent. And she did it not with vengeance, but with grace sharpened by truth. And then it slipped. Karoline's voice, once calm and polished, now cracked like old porcelain. Maybe if you miss struggle so much, you and your kind should just go back to Africa. The air was ripped from the room. Even the stage lights seemed to dim for a moment, as if embarrassed to be shining on her. She didn't shout it, she whispered it, but it echoed louder than a scream. The mic caught it. The audience heard it. America watched it live. Her handlers in the back winced. Her PR team froze. It was the moment the curtain dropped, and the face behind the mask was uglier than anyone imagined. It wasn't just an insult, it was a reveal. The rage behind legacy, the fear behind supremacy, the desperation behind power. Karoline had lost the debate. Now she was trying to reclaim control with the oldest weapon racism ever built. And the worst part? She thought it would work. She didn't flinch, she didn't shout, didn't even raise her voice. Jasmine Crockett just leaned forward, eyes still locked on Karoline, unblinking, unafraid, unbothered. And with a voice so calm, it cut deeper than any scream, she said, "Maybe it's not me who doesn't understand America. Maybe it's you." Silence. Not the weak kind. The kind that comes right before thunder. You could almost feel a collective exhale, like millions had been holding their breath for her, and finally she gave them permission to release it. She didn't need to shout because she wasn't trying to dominate the moment. She was defining it. And in that single sentence, she flipped the question Karoline had been wielding like a blade. What does it mean to be American? Jasmine's voice wasn't just a reply. It was a mirror, and Karoline didn't like what she saw. Jasmine didn't stop. The room still hadn't exhaled when she leaned back toward the mic, not to attack, but to remind. Her voice was lower now, measured, solemn. You speak of bloodline like it's a badge, but history doesn't remember blood. It remembers sacrifice. She paused just for a breath, then delivered. My great-grandfather picked cotton in Texas, not because he chose to, but because his choices were stolen. He never held a flag, but he never stopped praying for the freedom it promised. A murmur rippled through the crowd. My mother raised 3 children on 2 jobs and 1 prayer, not for glory, but because she believed this country could be better, that we could be better. Her voice didn't tremble. It carried generations. You say I don't understand America? I've lived its contradictions. I've buried family to its failures, and still I choose to stay, to fight, to believe. There were no cheers yet, just breathless silence. Because what Jasmine had just done wasn't debate, it was testimony. She wasn't defending her place. She was defining patriotism, not by birthright, but by blood, sweat, and unshakable hope. There was no applause, not yet. The camera panned the room. People were just standing. Old men with war pins on their jackets. Young women wiping silent tears. Staffers in suits frozen mid-breath. They didn't rise for celebration. They rose because something sacred had been touched. Jasmine Crockett didn't move. didn't smile. She simply breathed as if her entire lineage was breathing through her. The silence became louder than any cheer could have been. This wasn't a standing ovation, it was a stand of recognition. Recognition of sacrifice, of truth, of the America that isn't inherited but fought for, bled for, prayed for. One by one, they stood. Not to honor a politician, but to honor a mirror that had finally spoken back. And for the millions watching at home, many didn't even realize they were crying until their own hands touched their cheeks. It wasn't just about Jasmine anymore. It was about their mothers, their grandfathers, their own battles to belong. And in that moment, Jasmine Crockett didn't just win the debate, she became something bigger, a symbol of earned belonging in a country still figuring out what that truly means. The debate ended, but the aftershocks, they were just beginning. Within 48 hours, Karoline Leavitt's name vanished from 3 major fundraising rosters. Super PACs that once wrote her blank checks went silent. One donor's message leaked: "We support strength, not ego." And she exposed the wrong side of both. Polls took a nosedive. Her once loyal base began to fracture. Some defended her, but more began asking the question she feared most. Is this who we've been trusting with our voice? Her social media team went into panic mode. No scheduled tweets, no new interviews, just silence. And in that silence, a truth took root. You can't build loyalty on bloodlines alone. Karoline had tried to turn patriotism into a weapon, but the blade had spun. And now she was bleeding support. The next morning, while news anchors scrambled for sound bites and pundits debated the fallout, Jasmine Crockett was already walking through the halls of a community hospital in her home district. No cameras, no speeches, just a quiet nod to a nurse and a hand squeeze for a young mother waiting on test results. One doctor whispered to another, "That's her, the one from last night." But Jasmine wasn't interested in fame. She was interested in people. By that evening, she was sitting in a circle of folding chairs at the South Oak Community Center. No podium, no teleprompter, just neighbors, talking about water access, school safety, and keeping families fed. She listened more than she spoke, because this, not the CNN stage, was where her loyalty lived. Not in a bloodline, not in a legacy, but in showing up, over and over again. The debate clip didn't just fade away, it exploded. Across social media feeds, in living rooms, on morning shows, and in conversations at kitchen tables. People weren't just watching Jasmine, they were seeing themselves. A young Latina tweeted, "I've never felt prouder to be both Mexican and American. She made me feel seen." In Dallas, a mural went up overnight. A silhouette of Jasmine stood strong against a torn American flag, stitched back together by hands of every color. At community centers, churches, and mosques, her words were played on loop, becoming anthems of hope and belonging. News anchors called it a watershed moment. Political analysts called it a redefinition of patriotism. But for many, it was simply the first time they heard a voice that said, "You belong. Your story matters." And that was the real victory. As the studio lights dimmed and the cameras slowly cut away, one truth remained clear. True patriotism isn't inherited. It's built by sacrifice, built by resilience, built by the courage to stand even when the world says you don't belong. Jasmine Crockett showed us all that legacy isn't a birthright, but a daily choice. A relentless commitment to justice, community, and truth. And maybe, just maybe, that's the kind of patriotism that can heal a divided nation. Because when we build together, there's no room left for hate, no room for exclusion. Just the promise of a better America, not for some, but for all. In life, true belonging and respect are never handed down by birthright or inherited status. They are earned through courage, sacrifice, and unwavering commitment to justice and community. Jasmine Crockett's story teaches us that no matter where we come from, our actions define who we are and how deeply we belong. This means stand firm in your truth even when others doubt or exclude you. Let your deeds, not your background, speak for your loyalty and love, whether to your family, your community, or your country. Challenge inherited prejudices and break cycles of discrimination with dignity and facts. Remember, real patriotism and identity are built daily by those who fight for fairness, justice, and inclusion. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you see the power of truth and courage, don't keep it to yourself. Subscribe to AZ Exposed now to join a community that uncovers the voices and stories that matter. Hit the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story that challenges injustice and uplifts the truth. And share your thoughts below, because your voice is part of the change. Together we stand for justice, dignity, and a world where everyone truly belongs.